Kansas Speedway this weekend, the first race of the round of 12. I am joined by Greg Mathern, analytical expert from wintherace.info. Greg, it's great to see you again. Let's talk Kansas. Kyle Larson has to be the elephant in the room. He dominated Darlington a few weeks ago, similar intermediate, finished top 5. He just dominated Bristol, most recent race, led 460 laps. He won at Kansas in the spring. Is he the clear-cut, obvious favorite this weekend? Let's just start there.
Yeah, I think he has to be, right? When I look at handicapping Kansas, the three primary tracks I'm looking at are Kansas, Vegas, Darlington, and Homestead. They're the intermediate package, higher wear tracks. Obviously, Kansas doesn't wear quite as bad as Darlington or Homestead, but we've seen the tire wear get up there the past couple of years. And he has been dominant at that track type in 2024. He's led 522 laps at those three venues this year. That's 45% of the laps he's run. The next best in the series is Tyler Reddick at 181, and then Denny at 109. He has absolutely crushed this track type this year. He's led laps in every single one of those races. The fewest laps he's led at one of them was 15 at the first Darlington race. He led 64 here back in the spring, 180 at Vegas in the spring, and then obviously most recently at the Southern 500 he led 263, and of course didn't get that win, but he has been really, really good here. If we step back even more, let's look at the Gen 7 in total. He's got 5 wins at this track type in the 18 races. He's led 1,481 laps. That's almost 3 times what Denny has led, who's the number 2 guy at 545. He's led double-digit laps in 16 of the 18 races. So he's just been crushing at this type. If there's any mark to put against him, it's his DNF rate. In those 18 races, he's got 4 DNFs. That's a 22% DNF rate. The field has about a 14% DNF rate. And I'm not saying like completely stop. I'm saying like 97% of the laps run. So, if there's a mark against him, it's that sometimes he gets a little loose when he's being so aggressive at these tracks, and he wrecks himself out. But absolutely, he's got to be the favorite. If we look across, the industry, I think everybody recognizes that. And when we look down at the stats, absolutely, it bears it out.
Yeah, goodness gracious. Those were some gaudy numbers that you just showed off there for Kyle Larson at this track type. But you also mentioned 2 other drivers in that mix, Tyler Reddick, Denny Hamlin. Is Toyota the biggest threat to Larson this week? I know 2311 has won like 3 of the last 5 Kansas races. Denny Hamlin has a win in the past year and a half there. What do the numbers suggest about Toyota? Are they the closest challengers to Larson coming into the weekend?
Toyota absolutely has to be the concern for Larson. Kansas has absolutely been their playground. They have been really, really good here in the Gen 7. As you just mentioned, 2311's won 3 of the races. Denny Hamlin has another one. So of the 5 races, they've got 4 of them.
Wow.
And when we kind of dial it in and look at some of the stats by manufacturer, it's really kind of shocking how strong they've been here. So in those 5 races, we look at it, Toyota has had 33 cars go off, Chevy's had 77, and Ford has had 72 cars. So Toyota has, less than half the number of cars of either of the other manufacturers running in these races. But yet, still, as a total manufacturer, they have more top 5 laps as a manufacturer than either of the other 2 manufacturers. So they're running half the cars of either of the other guys, and yet they still have more of the top 5 laps. Dang. They've been up there. If we look at it on a per car basis, so take the total number of laps divided by the number of cars, Toyota comes out the top on every single category. They've got more top 10 laps per car, more top 5 laps per car, more top 3 laps per car. If we get down to the final number, obviously the one that we're talking about, if we're looking at the winner, for every Toyota start, a Toyota car has led 16.6 laps of the race. Chevy's led 8.96, and Ford has not been good here, down at 1.38. So they've been really, really good. Specifically, we mentioned Reddick. Reddick has more fast laps than anybody else. He's got 141. Larson's down at 129. So Larson's been really good here, but Reddick overall has been, the leader in that area. Denny's down at 80, and then everybody else is, well beneath that. So we look at that, and they've been really, really strong here. I think, yeah, Toyota has to absolutely be the one that, Larson is looking at as a group. Hey, these are the guys who are coming for me.
Interesting. I know Denny Hamlin, yeah, led the most laps here in the spring, coming off a strong Bristol race. Maybe the train is back on the tracks there, and he could challenge Larson. We see another classic 11 versus 5 battle. Let me ask you about some non-playoff drivers before we get back into the playoff field. I remember Ross Chastain looked really good here early in the spring, ran really well in stage 1, led some laps. Chris Buescher obviously came up just short, battling Larson in the closest Cup Series finish ever. Two drivers who just missed out in the playoffs but have shown a lot of speed the past few weeks. What do the numbers say about them? Could they play spoiler?
Yeah, they've both been really good here, obviously. RFK actually has all of those words that you just used blocked on Twitter because of that Busher second
Whoops.
place finish. They tweeted out about that. But yeah, Busher's been really good here, at this track type this year. He obviously wrecked out really early at Vegas and then ended up wrecking out late at Darlington, where he was in contention for a win there.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got top 10 finishes at the other two races. If we, again, looking at those, 4 races, his average running position's 8.33. So that's fifth best in the series. Only Larson, Reddick, Hamlin, and Gibbs are ahead of him there. So yeah, he absolutely has to be there. And certainly he has no pressure on him right now. His job is just to go win races. He's not worrying about the playoffs. Hey, just go out there and get great finishes, which he obviously did a couple of weeks ago at the Glen. So I think Buescher, given his history here, is a threat. Ross too. He's an interesting one because this year has just been a down year for him at this track type, right?
Hmm.
If we look at what he's done in the Gen 7 prior to this year, his average running position, specifically at Kansas, let's look at, is 9.03, which would be sixth best in the Cup Series. But then this year at this track type, he's dropped down to 13.5 in average running position. That puts him down at 11th. So not bad by any stretch of the imagination, right? He's still right around the top 10, but he's not been up there. He's not, battling in those elite guys the way that he was the past 2 years. So I think he's somebody to keep an eye on, but we've definitely seen him kind of fade off a little bit this year. Just hasn't quite had those numbers that he had the past 2 years. And so I think that is, maybe put him as a tier below Busher, but certainly, again, somebody who's been strong and could be a threat.
Yeah, and a note on Chris Buescher. You mentioned he's run well at the higher wear ovals this year. I mean, Watkins Glen, supposedly a higher wear road course this last time around, and he won there. So maybe there's a secret there. He's cracked the code, so to speak.
Managing his tires really well.
Yeah, Chris Buescher, absolutely one to watch. I want to end this with a few playoff guys. Bang through them real quick. Alex Bowman earned more points than anyone in the opening round of the playoffs. Hendrick Motorsports has looked really good at mile and a halfs this year. A lot of that has been Larson carrying, but Bowman's been in the mix. He was top 10 at Kansas in the spring. Are you buying Alex Bowman's recent surge? Can it continue into the round of 12?
Well, I've got a little bit of concern about Bowman, actually, because again, in 2024, he's kind of taken a step back. This is actually one of the track types where I historically am big on Alex Bowman because he has kind of surprisingly good numbers that I think kind of slip under most people's radar. And then he backs into the wins at the tracks, right? But so in 22 and 23 at these tracks, he had an average running position of 13.11. This year, when we look at the higher wear intermediates, he's down to 16.25. So he's fallen back about 3 positions this year, given where, relative to where he was the past couple of years. He's been really good here. He only has 4 starts at Kansas in the Gen 7. He had one of those injury starts taken out. But over that time, he's got 47% of his laps in the top 10. That said, he only has 9 laps, 9 total, not 9%, 9 laps in the top 5 here at Kansas.
Wow.
So he's been getting himself into the top 10, but then not making that next step forward. And then you add in kind of the step back in general at the intermediates in 2024. Bowman's one who he does concern me a little bit, but as you mentioned, he's been picking it up lately. So maybe that team has found something. Maybe they're going to come back strong and show us, the old kind of Alex Bowman, who's going to run right around that top 10, a little bit better than he has been this year.
I feel like we're going to say this about the next couple of drivers, but if he can survive Kansas with a top 10, maybe even a top 15, I like Talladega and the Roval in this round for these guys. Bowman is one. I would say Chase Briscoe, another driver who looked fantastic in the round of 12. Take out that Atlanta crash, he couldn't get stopped up in time. A couple of top 10 finishes. He was not necessarily in contention at Kansas in the spring, but he has a couple other good runs at intermediates this year. He was obviously fifth and then first in the 2 Darlington races. What do you make of Chase Briscoe? Are you buying his recent heater?
Well, Briscoe's actually kind of gone a little bit the opposite way of Alex Bowman when we look at his historical results. So Briscoe's certainly one who I think could. He has not been good at Kansas or at, higher wear intermediates in general in the Gen 7 car. So if we look at all of the races at these tracks, in the Gen 7, his average running position's been 21.04. If we look at just Kansas, it's been 24.74.
Yeah.
And he only has 19 laps in the top 10 across all 5 of those races.
Wow.
That said, some of this is obviously being pumped up by his success at Darlington this year. But if we look at this track type in 2024, he's got his average running position up to 14.27. That's going to be 13th in the Cup Series. So he's got kind of a positive direction that he's going. He's trending the right way as opposed to Bowman, who was going the other way, Ross going the other way. So Briscoe is definitely one who I think we should be keeping an eye on. He's showing he's getting better. That team, him and Boswell are putting together some, great strategy, great cars coming to the track and are really putting up speed right now. So I definitely think this is a track where he is showing some improvement, and this could be maybe his, hey, I'm arrived on this track type 2 race.
Greg, thank you so much for being on the show, talking numbers, a lot of interesting stuff, the trends, the trajectories that guys like Chastain are on versus Chase Briscoe, for example. Really, really interesting. Alex Bowman, but that's very, very interesting. Really appreciate you sharing. Y'all can find more of Greg's work at wintherace.info. He also does some work for dailydownforce.com from time to time. Greg, thanks for being on the show. Hope to see you at the track sometime soon.
Absolutely. Been a pleasure. Thanks.